My name is Courtney Jenkins, and at 29, I was 3 days from marrying the man I thought was my forever. That dream shattered at a family dinner when his parents slammed a prenup on the table and barked, "Sign here or get out." His sister cackled, thinking they'd cornered me. They had no clue the numbers in my account could buy their mansion twice over, and I wasn't about to bow. Just then my phone buzzed. I answered, my lawyer's voice calm, almost amused. What he said made my lips curl into a smile, and their smug grins froze. Before I get to my story, I wanted to know what time and what city you're listening in. I'm glad to know how far my story has spread, and hopefully it helps someone realize it sooner. I smiled, stood and walked out. Wiped those smug grins clean. His call came seconds later, voice cracking, but I cut it short. The real fight was just beginning. I grew up in a modest house in Brooklyn where my parents, both nurses, drilled into me the value of standing on my own 2 feet. Money was tight but enough, and they pushed education as the way up. I clawed my way through NYU on scholarships, burning the midnight oil to graduate top of my class in finance. That hustle shaped me. I learned to spot a good investment early, picking stocks that doubled my savings by junior year. My aunt, my biggest cheerleader, saw it too. When she passed during my final semester, she left me $6 million from decades of quiet, clever trades. Nobody would have guessed from her simple life in Queens. I poured most of that into safe investments, letting it grow, and used a chunk to launch my fintech app, a tool for everyday people to manage investments. By 27, the company was valued at $3 million, pushing my worth to $9 million. I kept it under wraps, living in a decent Michigan City apartment near the lake, driving a reliable Honda, dressing sharp but not flashy. I wanted my work to speak, not my bank account. Only my parents, my sister, Angela Jenkins, my friend Kimberly Ross, and my colleague Danielle Ross knew the truth. Angela, 3 years older, was my rock. She'd call from her Chicago teaching job, swapping stories about dodging toxic family drama from her friends' in-laws. "Stay sharp, Courtney," she'd say. "People hide agendas." Her words stuck. Kimberly, my college roommate turned lawyer, was my other lifeline. She'd help me navigate the legal maze of starting my company, her sharp mind catching contract loopholes I missed. Trust between us ran deep. She knew every dollar I had and why I hid it. Danielle, a coder at my startup, was newer but loyal, crunching numbers to keep our app's valuation airtight. I met Justin at a financial literacy gala in Indianapolis where my company donated app access for low-income families. He was there because his family, big players in Michigan City's finance scene, never missed a high-profile event. Justin stood out, not just his easy smile or sharp suit, but the way he asked real questions about the cause, not just nodding like the other trust fund types. We talked for hours about market gaps, lakeside runs, our shared obsession with Chicago-style pizza. When he asked for my number, I didn't hesitate, even knowing his family's clout. The Barretts were old money, their investment firm, a Midwest powerhouse since the railroad days. Our first date was a sunset walk along Lake Michigan's dunes, Justin carrying a thermos of coffee he'd brewed himself. He'd looked up my app, said he liked its clean design and mission. That was Justin. Thoughtful, grounded, not flashing wealth like his peers. We fell fast. Weekend hikes turned into late-night debates about stock trends, failed attempts at homemade pasta, and a connection that felt like home. He loved my drive, how I built something from nothing. I loved his fairness, the way he pushed for ethical deals despite his family's cutthroat legacy. My wealth never came up. It didn't seem to matter. I thought we were building something real, something equal. Kimberly and Danielle cheered me on. "He's solid," Kimberly said over coffee, "but watch his family. Old money's tricky." Danielle, crunching data at the office, agreed. "They'll expect you to fit their mold." Angela was blunter on our weekly calls. "Rich families love control. Don't let them push you." I brushed it off, caught up in Justin. When he suggested meeting his parents after 6 months, I was nervous but hopeful. I wanted them to see me, Courtney, the woman who matched their son's heart, not some resume to judge. The night before we drove to their beach house in Michigan City, Justin got quiet. "My family's intense," he said, staring at the lake. "They've got expectations." I pressed, but he waved it off, saying it was just about appearances. His hesitation hit me wrong, like he was holding something back. I didn't push, figuring I'd see for myself. Lying awake that night, Angela's warning echoed, hidden agendas. For the first time, I wondered if Justin was fully on my side, or if his family's shadow was bigger than I thought. The Barrett's beach house in Michigan City loomed against the Lake Michigan dunes, all glass and cedar, big enough to host a small wedding. 6 months into dating Justin Barrett, he drove us there to meet his family. I'd felt a knot in my stomach since his cryptic warning the night before about their intensity. Stepping inside, the place screamed money, polished wood floors, a chandelier glinting over a view of the water. I wore a simple dress, nice but not showy, wanting them to see me, not some polished version. George Barrett, Justin's father, greeted us with a firm handshake, his tailored blazer screaming, Midwest Finance Kingpin. Linda Barrett, his mother, offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes, her silk scarf probably worth my monthly rent. Michelle Barrett, his older sister, leaned against a counter, her sharp gaze sizing me up like I was a stock about to crash. Courtney, so nice to finally meet you, Linda said, her tone sweet but probing. NYU's respectable. Did scholarships cover everything? The question sounded innocent but wasn't. It was a dig at my background. Over dinner, George talked investments with Justin, name-dropping clients I'd never heard of, shutting me out. Michelle chimed in, asking about my little app like it was a side hustle. Fintech's cute, she said, smirking. But real money's in established firms like ours. Justin squeezed my hand under the table, but he didn't call her out. Linda kept up the subtle jabs. Your parents must be so proud being nurses. Such a practical career. I forced a smile, feeling like I was on trial for not being born rich. Ryan Clark, Justin's colleague from the firm, was there too, invited for some deal discussion. He seemed friendly, but dropped hints about the Barrett's expectations. Family legacy's a big deal here, he said, glancing at me. Justin's lucky to carry it. It felt like a warning. I caught Justin's eye, but he looked away, focusing on his plate. That stung. He wasn't defending me, just navigating his family like always. Things got worse when Michelle pulled out her phone, texting someone with a sly grin. Later, I overheard her on a call outside mentioning a check on her background. I didn't know who she was talking to, but it set off alarms. Angela's words from our last call echoed, rich families love control. I texted Kimberly Ross, my lawyer and best friend, that night. Justin's family's digging into me. Advice? She replied, fast. Keep your cards close. Don't show your hand yet. Her calm focus grounded me. She'd been my rock since college, always spotting traps I missed. Back in Michigan City, Justin proposed a year later on a quiet beach near the dunes with his aunt's sapphire ring glinting in the sunset. I said yes, heart racing, thinking we'd build something together. But his family's shadow lingered. Linda pushed for a proper wedding venue, implying I couldn't afford their standards. I let it slide, pride keeping my $9 million secret. Danielle Ross, my startup's lead coder, noticed my stress at work. They're testing you, she said, handing me our latest valuation report. Stay focused. Your app's killing it. Her support kept me steady. Michelle's behavior got bolder. At a family brunch, she mentioned a friend who'd heard about my app. Heather Clark, Justin's ex, who'd texted Michelle about me. She thinks you're ambitious, Michelle said, her tone dripping with insinuation. I realized she was trying to rattle me, maybe even sabotage things. Justin brushed it off as sister stuff, but his dismissal felt off, like he was avoiding conflict. Ryan at the same brunch let slip that Justin had been stressed about family expectations for months. He's got a lot riding on this, Ryan said, not meeting my eyes. Another red flag. I called Angela that night, pacing my apartment. Michelle's digging, maybe with Justin's ex. Something's not right. Angela didn't mince words. Sounds like they're building a case against you. Don't let them box you in. Her Chicago bluntness hit home. I needed to stay sharp. I met Kimberly for coffee the next day, laying out my worries. She leaned forward, all business. If they're digging, we dig back. I know a guy, Scott Mills, a private investigator. He can look into their firm, see if they've got dirt. I hesitated, but her confidence sold me. Do it, I said, quietly. Scott Mills was a pro mid-40s with a knack for finding financial skeletons. Kimberly hired him that week, tasking him to check the Barrett's investment firm for anything shady, tax loopholes, questionable deals. If they're playing dirty, we'll have leverage, Kimberly said. I felt a mix of nerves and resolve. I wasn't the naive girl they thought. My app's success, my investments, my hustle, those were mine, and I wouldn't let the Barretts diminish them. As wedding planning ramped up, Justin got quieter. One night walking by the lake, he admitted his family was pressuring him about our future. They just want what's best, he said, but his voice wavered like he wasn't sure who he was convincing. I pressed for details, but he shut down, saying it was complicated. That was the moment I knew. He was hiding something, maybe even from himself. I went home staring at the ceiling, Angela's warning louder now. People hide agendas. I wasn't just walking into a family dinner soon, I was walking into a fight. Late that night, I slipped out to the balcony for air. Voices carried from the beach house's patio below, Michelle on her phone again, laughing. The PI's got nothing big on her yet, but she's no match for us, she said. Mom will handle it at the dinner. My blood ran cold. They were planning something, and Justin's silence felt heavier. I wasn't just meeting his family anymore. I was stepping into their trap, and I had to be ready. Wedding planning started as a whirlwind of joy, but it quickly showed cracks. Linda Barrett took over, pushing for a lavish venue at a Michigan City country club, assuming I couldn't afford anything worthy of a Barrett. She picked out a towering cake from an upscale bakery, dismissing my choice of a simple lemon one as charming but not quite right. I let it go, pride keeping my $9 million under wraps. I figured once Justin and I were married, we'd carve out our own life downtown away from their lakefront estate. My one non-negotiable was my dress, sleek, modern, making me feel unstoppable. Even then, Linda hinted it was budget-friendly, her smile sharp as a blade. Justin tried to balance things, backing me on small choices like flowers but nudging me to compromise on the guest list when Linda added her socialite friends. "It's just easier," he'd say, his voice soft but strained. I gave in more than I wanted, telling myself the details didn't matter as long as we ended up together. But Michelle Barrett's probing from that first dinner lingered in my mind, especially her overheard call about a PI. I kept my guard up, texting Kimberly Ross to stay ready. "They're circling," I wrote. "Scott's on it," she replied, meaning our PI. Scott Mills was digging into the Barrett's firm. 3 days before the wedding, everything was set. Venue booked, catering confirmed, my dress tailored. I was finalizing with the photographer when Linda called, her voice syrupy. "Courtney, join us for a family dinner tonight at the beach house. Just us to celebrate before the chaos." Justin was stuck at a client meeting, she said, so it'd be a cozy evening. I should have caught the trap in her tone, but I was running on coffee and stress, hoping for a chance to connect. I agreed, pulling into their driveway that evening, my Honda out of place next to George's Bentley and Michelle's Porsche. The beach house dining room felt like a stage, all polished wood and lake views, the table set with untouched plates. George Barrett sat at the head, his suit crisp, exuding boardroom authority. Linda, in a designer dress, poured wine with practiced grace. Michelle lounged across from me, her smirk barely hidden. Ryan Clark wasn't there, but his earlier comment about family legacy echoed in my head. "Courtney, so glad you're here," Linda said, her smile tight. "We need to settle some business before the big day." My stomach dropped. George slid a thick document across the table, blue cover gleaming. "This is a prenup," he said, no preamble. "It protects our family's assets and outlines terms if the marriage ends." I stared at it, heart pounding. "Justin and I never discussed this." Linda leaned in. "He understands its necessity. Barrett's spouses always sign." I doubted it. Michelle's husband came from money, no need for protection. I scanned the pages, my finance brain kicking in. It was brutal. I'd get nothing in a divorce, no matter how long we were married, and clauses could claim my app's intellectual property. "This is one-sided," I said, voice steady despite the heat in my chest. George waved a hand. "Standard for our wealth level. And my business. My assets." Michelle laughed loud and sharp. "Your little app. It's not exactly Barrett level, dear." The condescension burned. They saw me as a nobody climbing too high. "We could add a clause for your company," George offered, like throwing a bone. "Justin's generous, you know. He supports small ventures." Linda produced a pen. "Sign tonight. The wedding's close. I need my lawyer to review it," I said. George's eyes narrowed. "Our attorney's top tier. For Barrett interests," I shot back. "Not mine." Linda's smile faltered. "This is standard, Courtney. Practical. Then 24 hours for review." They exchanged a glance. "Tonight," George said, voice hard. "Or the wedding's at risk." "So it's sign or get out," I pressed, needing clarity. Linda's eyes went cold. "Barrett expectations aren't negotiable. If you love Justin, you'll sign." Michelle leaned back, smirking. "Or get out," George said bluntly. "We've paid for this wedding. We'll cancel if needed." The ultimatum hung heavy. They thought I'd cave, the middle-class girl desperate for their son. I grabbed the document, hands steady. "I'll talk to Justin." Linda scoffed. "He knows family duty." That cut deep. The idea he was in on this. By morning, George said, "Sign, or we're done." As I walked out, Michelle's voice drifted from the dining room. "She'll sign. Who else gets a Barrett?" Linda's laugh twisted the knife. I drove off, tears blurring the lakefront road, pulling over once to breathe. Justin called twice. I ignored him, too raw to talk. Ryan Clark texted out of nowhere, "Heard you left upset." Justin knew about the prenup. "Didn't want to stress you." My heart sank. He was complicit. At home, I called Angela Jenkins. "They ambushed me with a prenup," I said, voice shaking. "Ultimatum." Justin might have known. Angela didn't hesitate. "Don't bend, Courtney. They're bullies. You're worth more than their game." Her words steadied me. I texted Danielle Ross, who'd been crunching our app's numbers. Need you to double-check the valuation tomorrow. On it, she replied. You've got this. Kimberly was next. They hit me with a prenup, I told her, pacing. It's a power grab. Her voice was all business. Send me the doc. Scott's got something on their firm. Shady offshore deals. We'll hit back. My anger sharpened into focus. The Barretts wanted a fight, and I wasn't the pushover they thought. I wasn't just protecting my heart anymore. I was ready to flip their world upside down. I sat in my Michigan City apartment, the prenup document heavy on my coffee table, its pages screaming the Barretts' arrogance. My hands shook from the dinner ambush, but Angela's words, "Don't bend, Courtney," burned in my mind. I dialed Kimberly Ross first thing. They hit me with a prenup, I said, voice tight. It's a trap. I get nothing, and they could claim my app's IP. Kimberly didn't flinch. Send it over. We'll tear it apart. Scott's got dirt on their firm. Offshore accounts, tax dodges. We're building a counter. Her confidence steadied me. Let's hit back, I said. Hard. Kimberly met me at a diner near the lake that morning, her laptop open, eyes sharp. She'd drafted a counter prenup. Fair balance, protecting my $9 million and Justin's assets equally, with ironclad clauses for my app's IP. This levels the field, she said, sliding it over. But we need more. Scott found a paper trail. The Barretts' firm funneled money through shady Cayman accounts. It's leverage. I nodded, feeling the shift. I wasn't just defending myself now. I was flipping their game. Danielle Ross called next, confirming our app's latest valuation, $3 million locked in from our last funding round. Your numbers are solid, she said. They can't touch you. Her support fueled me. I texted Angela Jenkins, filling her in. They think I'm broke, I wrote. I'm done hiding. Her reply was instant. Cut them loose if Justin's not all in. You're worth more. Her bluntness hit home. I needed to know where he stood. I called Justin Barrett, my heart pounding. He answered on the first ring. Courtney, what happened? Mom said you stormed out. His voice was strained, but I wasn't buying the concern. Your family ambushed me with a prenup, I said, keeping my tone even. Sign or get out, they said. You knew, didn't you? Silence. Then I meant to tell you, he admitted, voice low. I thought I'd handle it later. My chest tightened. Later. 3 days before our wedding, you let them blindside me. It's family tradition, he said, defensive. Protects our trusts. And my business. My work, I pressed. They wrote clauses to claim my app. Another pause. That's not right, he said, but his hesitation screamed complicity. Ryan Clark's text from last night flashed in my mind. Justin knew. Ryan told me you were in on it, I said, voice hard. You knew from the start. He didn't deny it. I didn't want to stress you, he mumbled. It's just a paper. Just a paper, I snapped. It's control, Justin. Your family thinks I'm a nobody, and you let them. He sighed, using that lawyer tone I hated. You're overreacting. We can fix it after the wedding. After your mom said it's non-negotiable for a Barrett wife. We'll figure it out, he hedged. Family trusts are complicated, hard for a nurse's kid to get. The echo of Linda's condescension cut deep. If it's so simple, why let them threaten to cancel our wedding? No answer. Choose, Justin, I said. Me or them. I love you, he said. But their family. That was it. He wasn't all in. I hung up, tears hot but resolve hotter. A text buzzed from an unknown number. Heather Clark, Justin's ex, forwarded by Michelle. Heard you're marrying up, it read. Careful. Barretts don't keep strays long. The sabotage was clear. Michelle was pulling strings, trying to shake me. I saved the text, forwarding it to Kimberly. Michelle's playing dirty, I wrote. Use this. Kimberly replied, got it. Scott's dirt is ready. Their firm's dodging taxes big time. We'll bury them. I met Danielle at the office later, her desk piled with valuation reports. You're at $3 million, she said, handing me the numbers. Show them who you are. I nodded, my mind racing. Angela called as I drove home. Justin knew, she asked, furious. Dump him now, Courtney. You don't need a man who won't fight for you. Her words sank in. She was right. This wasn't just about the Barretts anymore. Justin's silence was a betrayal, and I wasn't signing my life away to fix it. Kimberly called that evening, her voice electric. Scott's got enough to rattle them. Offshore accounts tied to George's firm, sketchy enough to raise eyebrows. The counter prenup's ready. When do we hit? I thought of Michelle's smirk, Linda's fake sweetness, George's ultimatum, Justin's weak excuses. Tomorrow, I said. We meet them at the lakefront restaurant. I'm done playing nice. Kimberly laughed. That's my girl. We'll wipe their grins clean. I barely slept, my mind mapping every step. The Barretts thought they'd cornered a nobody, but they were about to meet Courtney Jenkins, the woman with $9 million and no patience for their games. Tomorrow I'd walk into that restaurant with Kimberly's counter-prenup, Scott's dirt, and the truth about my wealth. They'd pushed too far, and I was ready to push back harder. The lakefront restaurant in Michigan City gleamed under the evening sun, its glass walls reflecting the dunes. I'd chosen it for the showdown, public enough to keep things civil, private enough to hit hard. Kimberly Ross sat beside me, her leather portfolio packed with our counter-prenup and Scott Mills's dirt on the Barretts. I wore a tailored black dress, sharp and unyielding, my aunt's sapphire earrings glinting as a reminder of my roots. Justin Barrett, George Barrett, Linda Barrett, and Michelle Barrett arrived 10 minutes late. A power move, no doubt. George's suit screamed authority, Linda's designer gown dripped wealth, Michelle's smirk was sharp as ever, and Justin looked drained, his tie slightly off. "Courtney, let's make this quick," Linda said, settling in. "Have you signed?" Her tone assumed compliance. I slid the counter-prenup across the table, my face calm. "Not your version. This one's fair. Protects my assets, and Justin's equally, with clauses for my app's IP." George's eyebrows shot up. "Your assets." Michelle snorted. "What's your little startup?" I held their gaze unflinching. $9 million. $6 million from my aunt's estate, $3 million from my company's valuation. I'm not the broke girl you thought. The table went silent. Linda's wine glass froze midair, Michelle's smirk vanished. George's jaw tightened. Justin's eyes widened, but he said nothing. That hurt most. "Impossible," Linda stammered. "You live in a modest apartment." "I value substance over flash," I said, "unlike some." George grabbed the financial statements I'd brought, his lawyer eyes scanning fast. "These are legitimate," he muttered, stunned. Michelle's face reddened. "Why hide this?" she snapped. "Why play poor to be loved for me?" I said, voice steady. "Not my money. But you failed that test." "Next reveal." "Your prenup was a power grab," I said, tapping our counter-version. "This one's balanced. Equal splits based on marriage length, no claims on my IP." George flipped through it, his frown deepening. "This changes things," he admitted, but Linda cut in. "We need time to review." "You gave me none," I shot back. "You said sign or get out. Now you've got until tomorrow." Michelle scoffed, but her confidence was cracking. Third reveal. I pulled out my phone, displaying Heather Clark's text, forwarded by Michelle. "Heard you're marrying up. Careful. Barretts don't keep strays long." Michelle paled. "You sent this," I said, staring her down. "Using Justin's ex to scare me off." "It backfired." Linda gasped, turning to Michelle. "You did what?" Michelle stammered. "It was just a warning." "It was sabotage," I said. "And it proves you're scared of who I really am." Fourth reveal. "Scott Mills, my investigator, found something else," I said, sliding over his report. "Your firm's been dodging taxes through Cayman accounts. Shady deals, George. That's your legacy." George's face went ashen, his hands gripping the paper. "This is inaccurate," he said. But his voice shook. Linda looked betrayed, Michelle frozen. Justin finally spoke, voice low. "Courtney, why go this far?" I turned to him, my heart heavy but resolve firm. "Because you knew about their prenup from the start and let them ambush me." That was the fifth reveal, his complicity. Justin's eyes dropped. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," he mumbled. "I thought I could fix it." "You chose them?" I said, voice breaking but clear. "You let them think I was nothing. That's not love." He reached for my hand. "Courtney, please. We can work this out." I pulled back. "No, Justin. I'm done with half measures." I stood Kimberly beside me and dropped the final blow. "The wedding's off. I'm walking away with my $9 million and my dignity." Michelle's mouth gaped, Linda's eyes welled up, George's face was stone. Justin looked gutted, but I didn't waver. My phone buzzed. Kimberly's signal that the $9 million transfer was confirmed, my safety net secure. I smiled the same smile from the dinner and walked out. Their smug grins were gone, replaced by shock and regret. I didn't look back. Outside, the lake air hit me cool and freeing. I'd spent years hiding my worth to be loved for me, but the Barretts and Justin showed me love wasn't enough without respect. I called Angela Jenkins as I drove home. "It's done," I said. "Wedding's off." She exhaled. "You did right, Courtney. You're free now." Danielle Ross texted, "Proud of you." "App's still climbing." Kimberly called later, laughing. "Scott says their firm's scrambling to cover those accounts." "You shook them." Sitting in my apartment, I reflected on the whirlwind. I learned a hard lesson: self-respect trumps toxic love every time. The Barretts saw wealth as power, a tool to control. I saw it as independence, a way to live true. Their mistake was underestimating me, assuming I'd bend to fit their mold. But I wasn't their pawn. I was Courtney Jenkins, built from scratch, and I'd never compromise my value again. To anyone listening, here's my warning: don't ignore the signs of disrespect, whether it's family, a partner, or their allies. If they demand you shrink to fit their world, walk away. Equality and independence aren't negotiable. They're the foundation of a life worth living. I learned that the hard way, but it made me stronger. You can be too. Thank you for hearing my story. It's not just about me, it's about knowing your worth and standing firm. If this resonated, hit subscribe and drop a comment about a time you had to stand up to being underestimated. Your story might inspire someone else to walk away from what doesn't serve them.
"You're clearly delusional," Leonard said, his voice echoing through the conference room as every pair of eyes turned toward me. "Desperate women like you always make things up." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. I had learned that much during my 6 years at Halcyon Strategic Advisors here in Denver, Colorado. Never let them see you break. My name is Tiana Brooks, and I am 32 years old. For the past 6 years, I have worked as a senior analyst at this prestigious consulting firm, building a reputation for precision and calm leadership that I thought would protect me. I was wrong. As I sat in that sterile conference room, watching my colleagues avoid eye contact, I realized that everything I had worked for was crumbling around me. But what Leonard Massey, the senior partner who had just publicly humiliated me, did not know was that I had been preparing for this moment for months. Every inappropriate text message, every uncomfortable encounter, every time his hand lingered too long on my shoulder during meetings, I had documented it all. The meeting ended with my termination. Performance concerns, they called it. I nodded politely, gathered my things, and walked out of that building with my head held high. Leonard watched me go with a satisfied smirk, probably thinking he had won. He had no idea what was coming. 6 months earlier, everything had seemed perfect in my professional life. I had just been promoted to senior analyst, and my work on the Meridian account had earned praise from the entire executive team. Leonard had been my mentor since I started at Halcyon, guiding my career with what I thought was genuine interest in my professional development. The first inappropriate message came on a Thursday night in February. I was working late, finalizing a presentation for a major client, when my phone buzzed. It was Leonard. "You look beautiful when you're concentrated. I've been watching you from my office." I stared at the message, confused. Was this some kind of joke? Leonard was married, had 2 teenage daughters, and had always maintained strict professional boundaries. I decided to ignore it, thinking perhaps he had sent it to the wrong person by mistake. But the messages continued. Compliments about my appearance, comments about my clothes, questions about my personal life that made me increasingly uncomfortable. I started taking screenshots, though I wasn't sure why at the time. Some instinct told me to document everything. My relationship with Leonard had always been professional, even friendly. He had championed my promotions, included me in high-profile meetings, and seemed genuinely invested in my success. His wife, Patricia, was lovely. We had met at several company events, and she always asked about my family with genuine warmth. When Leonard began requesting private meetings about career development, I thought nothing of it initially. He was a senior partner, after all, and I valued his guidance. But these meetings started happening more frequently, often in his office after hours when the building was nearly empty. During one particularly uncomfortable encounter in March, Leonard had cornered me near the copy machine. "You know, Tiana," he said, standing much too close, "your promotion to director level depends on how well we work together. I hope you understand what I mean." His hand brushed against my arm as he spoke, and I felt my stomach turn. That night, I went home and called my sister Victoria. "Something is happening at work," I told her, my voice shaking. "I don't know what to do." Victoria, a lawyer herself, was blunt. Document everything. Every message, every interaction. If this escalates, you'll need proof. I wished I had listened to her sooner. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday in April. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my phone buzzed with another message from Leonard. This time, it wasn't just inappropriate, it was explicit. The message contained a photo I never wanted to see, and words that made my hands shake as I read them. I immediately took a screenshot, adding it to the growing file on my phone. By this point, I had over 300 documented instances of harassment spanning 4 months. Text messages sent at all hours, voicemails left on my direct line, and detailed notes about every uncomfortable encounter. That afternoon, I made the decision to report Leonard to Human Resources. I scheduled a meeting with Jennifer Walsh, the head of HR, and brought printed copies of some of the worst messages. Jennifer listened with a concerned expression, taking notes and assuring me that the company took these matters seriously. "We'll launch an immediate investigation," she promised. "In the meantime, try to maintain professional distance from Mr. Massey." For 2 weeks, I heard nothing. When I followed up with Jennifer, she seemed confused. "What complaint?" she asked, shuffling through papers on her desk. "I don't have any record of our conversation." My heart sank. The printed messages I had given her were nowhere to be found. It was as if our meeting had never happened. I realized then that Leonard's influence at Halcyon ran deeper than I had imagined. As a senior partner, he likely had connections throughout the company, including in HR. I decided to document our conversation with Jennifer as well, typing up detailed notes immediately after leaving her office. I also made multiple backup copies of all the evidence I had collected, storing them in different locations to ensure they couldn't disappear like my HR complaint had. The harassment escalated. Leonard became bolder, sending messages during business hours and making increasingly explicit comments during team meetings. He seemed to believe he was untouchable, that his position protected him from any consequences. One Friday evening, as I was preparing to leave the office, Leonard appeared in my cubicle. "Tiana, I need to see you in my office," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. In his office, with the door closed, Leonard made his intentions crystal clear. "Your career at this firm depends on your cooperation," he said, his voice low and threatening. "I think you understand what that means." I stood up slowly, my heart pounding. "I understand perfectly," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. That weekend, I made copies of everything, every screenshot, every voicemail, every note I had taken. I organized them chronologically, creating an irrefutable timeline of Leonard's behavior. I also researched the members of Halcyon's board of directors, identifying their email addresses and gathering information about their backgrounds. On Monday morning, I walked into the office knowing it might be my last day. But I was ready for whatever Leonard threw at me. He had underestimated me completely, and that would be his downfall. Monday morning arrived with an ominous email in my inbox. Conference room B, 9 a.m. Mandatory attendance. It was signed by Jennifer Walsh from HR, but something felt wrong. Leonard's fingerprints were all over this. I spent the weekend preparing for war, but I wasn't ready for the ambush that awaited me. When I entered the conference room, Leonard was already there with Jennifer and 2 other senior partners I barely knew, David Harrison and Thomas Crawford. The setup screamed intimidation. "Tiana, please sit down," Jennifer said, her tone formal and cold, completely different from our previous conversation that she had mysteriously forgotten. "We need to discuss some serious allegations that have been brought to our attention." My stomach dropped. Allegations against me? Leonard sat back in his chair with a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He was enjoying this. "It has come to our attention," Jennifer continued, reading from a prepared statement, "that you have been making false accusations against Mr. Massey. This behavior is completely unacceptable and violates our company's code of conduct." I felt the room spinning. False accusations? I have documentation of everything. Documentation can be fabricated, Leonard interrupted smoothly. I've seen desperate women do this before. When they realize their career isn't advancing as quickly as they'd hoped, they look for someone to blame. The words desperate women hit me like a slap. David Harrison and Thomas Crawford nodded along, clearly having already been briefed by Leonard's version of events. I realized this entire meeting was orchestrated to discredit me before I could take my evidence further. I want to see this alleged documentation, Jennifer said, extending her hand. This was the trap. If I showed them my evidence now, they could claim it was fabricated. If I didn't, they could use my refusal against me. I made a split-second decision that would change everything. I don't have it with me, I lied smoothly, but I can bring it tomorrow. Leonard's smile widened. Of course you don't, because it doesn't exist. These are very serious accusations you're making, Tiana, David Harrison said, his voice stern. False harassment claims can destroy careers and reputations. We cannot tolerate this kind of behavior at Halcyon. The irony was suffocating. Here I was, being lectured about destroying careers while Leonard sat smugly across from me, having done exactly that to me, and who knows how many other women. We're placing you on administrative leave pending a full investigation, Jennifer announced. You'll need to surrender your company phone and laptop immediately. My heart raced. They were cutting off my access to the evidence stored on my work devices. But I had anticipated this move and backed everything up to my personal accounts weeks ago. I understand, I said calmly, sliding my company phone and laptop across the table. Leonard leaned forward. Tiana, I want you to know this gives me no pleasure. I've always tried to support your career here. But when someone makes false accusations... He shook his head sadly, playing the wounded mentor perfectly. As I gathered my personal items, I noticed Thomas Crawford watching me with a strange expression. Unlike the others, he didn't seem entirely convinced by Leonard's performance. I filed that observation away for later. Walking to my desk to collect my things, I felt the weight of everyone's stares. Word had clearly spread about the meeting, and my colleagues whispered among themselves as I passed. Some looked sympathetic. Others seemed to believe I had gotten what I deserved. At my desk, I carefully packed my personal belongings, making sure to grab the small external drive hidden in my drawer, my insurance policy. As I loaded the last box into my car, I allowed myself one moment of genuine emotion. 6 years of my life, gone. But Leonard had made one crucial mistake. He thought destroying my career would silence me. Instead, it had freed me to tell my story without fear of professional consequences. That evening, I sat in my apartment with my laptop open, staring at the folder containing over 300 screenshots. The evidence was damning, but I needed to be strategic about how I used it. Leonard had outmaneuvered me at Halcyon, but the game wasn't over. I called my sister Victoria, who had been my anchor throughout this nightmare. They fired you? She asked, incredulous. After what he did to you? Technically, I'm on administrative leave, but we both know how this ends, I replied. Victoria, I need your legal advice. What's my best move here? Victoria, who specialized in employment law at her firm in Chicago, was quiet for a moment. You have 2 options. File a lawsuit, which could take years and might not get the justice you deserve. Or what? Go nuclear. Take this to the board, the media, social media. Make it impossible for them to ignore or cover up. I had been thinking the same thing. Leonard's power came from operating in shadows, using his influence to silence women before their stories could gain traction. But what if I removed his ability to control the narrative? The board meeting, I said suddenly. Halcyon's quarterly board meeting is this Thursday. I saw it on the company calendar. Perfect timing, Victoria agreed. Board members hate surprises, especially ones that could expose the company to liability. I spent the next 2 days crafting the most important presentation of my life. Not a PowerPoint full of business metrics, but a comprehensive timeline of Leonard's harassment, complete with screenshots, dates, and context. I researched each board member, understanding their backgrounds and what would motivate them to act. Margaret Chen, the board chairwoman, had built her career championing women in business. Robert Singh had daughters my age. Patricia Williams had recently joined after a high-profile sexual harassment scandal destroyed her previous company. These weren't just names on a website. They were people who would understand the gravity of what I was revealing. Wednesday night, I couldn't sleep. I kept rehearsing what I would say, how I would present the evidence. But doubt crept in during the quiet hours. What if they didn't believe me? What if Leonard had already poisoned them against me? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I know what Leonard did to you. You're not the first. Be strong tomorrow. The message was unsigned, but someone inside Halcyon was supporting me. Thursday morning, I dressed carefully in my best suit, the navy blue one I had worn to my promotion interview 2 years ago. I wanted to look professional, credible, strong. I arrived at Halcyon's headquarters 30 minutes before the board meeting, knowing security would try to stop me. I'm here to address the board, I told the receptionist, my voice calm and confident. You don't have an appointment, she replied, clearly uncomfortable. I have information the board needs to hear regarding potential legal liability for the company. The magic words, legal liability, opened doors quickly. Within minutes, I was escorted to a waiting room outside the boardroom. Through the glass walls, I could see the board members taking their seats. Leonard was there too, presenting what looked like quarterly financial reports. Margaret Chen stepped out to speak with me personally. Miss Brooks, I understand you have concerns to raise with the board? Yes, ma'am. Concerns that could result in significant legal exposure for Halcyon if not addressed immediately. She studied my face for a moment, then nodded. We'll hear you after Mr. Massey finishes his presentation. As I waited, my hand steady despite my racing heart, I thought about all the women who had probably sat in similar rooms, with similar evidence, only to be silenced or dismissed. Today, that pattern would end. Leonard's presentation ended with enthusiastic applause from the board. He had just finished explaining how his division had exceeded revenue targets by 15% when Margaret Chen announced that I would be addressing them next. I watched Leonard's face carefully as I entered the room. His confident smile faltered for just a moment before he recovered his composure. I'm not sure why Miss Brooks is here, he said smoothly. She's currently on administrative leave pending an investigation into some concerning behavior. Mr. Massey, please take a seat, Margaret said firmly. Miss Brooks, you have our attention. I had practiced this moment dozens of times, but standing before 9 board members felt surreal. These were some of the most powerful people in Denver's business community, and they were about to see Leonard's true character. Thank you for allowing me to speak, I began, connecting my laptop to the projector. I'm here to present evidence of systematic sexual harassment by Mr. Leonard Massey, evidence that human resources has mysteriously lost or ignored. The room went silent. Leonard started to object, but Margaret silenced him with a look. Over the past 4 months, I continued, clicking to my first slide, I have documented over 300 instances of inappropriate communication and behavior from Mr. Massey. The first screenshot appeared on the screen, one of Leonard's more explicit text messages, complete with timestamp and his phone number clearly visible. Several board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This message was sent at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, I explained. I was working late on the Henderson account when I received it. Note the date. This was 3 days after I reported to HR that Mr. Massey was making me uncomfortable. I clicked through more slides, each one more damning than the last. Photos Leonard had sent that I had to carefully obscure for the presentation. Voice messages transcribed word for word. A detailed timeline showing how his behavior escalated after I tried to set boundaries. Leonard's face had gone pale. This is clearly fabricated, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Anyone can fake text messages these days. You're absolutely right, I replied calmly. That's why I also have the original messages on my phone, complete with metadata that can be verified by any digital forensics expert. Robert Singh leaned forward. Miss Brooks, you mentioned that HR lost your complaint? Yes, sir. I met with Jennifer Walsh, provided printed copies of evidence, and filed a formal complaint. 2 weeks later, when I followed up, she claimed to have no record of our meeting or the evidence I provided. Then Patricia Williams, who had been taking detailed notes, looked up sharply. That's a very serious allegation against our HR department. Which is why I documented that conversation as well, I said, clicking to another slide showing my typed notes from the meeting, complete with date and timestamps. The room was dead silent, except for the sound of keyboards as board members took notes. Leonard sat frozen. His earlier confidence completely evaporated. There's one more thing, I said, clicking to my final slide. Yesterday I received an anonymous message suggesting I'm not the first woman Mr. Massey has harassed at this company. Margaret Chen's expression hardened. Thank you, Miss Brooks. We'll need copies of all this evidence for our investigation. Of course, I replied, ejecting a USB drive from my laptop. Everything is here, along with additional documentation. As I gathered my materials, Leonard finally found his voice. You're destroying my family, my career, over a misunderstanding? No, I interrupted, looking him directly in the eyes. You destroyed your own career the moment you decided to abuse your power. Walking out of that boardroom, I felt lighter than I had in months. The truth was finally out, and there was no putting it back in the box. 24 hours after my presentation to the board, Leonard Massey's career at Halcyon Strategic Advisors was over. I learned about it not from an official announcement, but from watching through the window of a coffee shop across the street as security escorted him from the building, carrying a single cardboard box. My phone had been ringing all morning. Victoria called first. It's all over the industry blogs already. Senior partner terminated following harassment investigation. You did it, Tiana. But the most satisfying call came from Margaret Chen herself. Miss Brooks, I want to personally apologize for what you endured at our company. The board has voted unanimously to terminate Mr. Massey's partnership and begin a comprehensive review of our HR practices. The investigation that followed was swift and thorough. Jennifer Walsh was placed on administrative leave pending review of how she had handled my initial complaint. Within a week, 2 other women came forward with their own stories about Leonard, their courage bolstered by seeing that someone had finally been believed. Leonard tried to control the narrative one last time, issuing a statement through his lawyer claiming he was the victim of a coordinated attack by disgruntled employees. But the evidence was too overwhelming, too detailed, too thoroughly documented for anyone to question its authenticity. The text message that had started everything, that first inappropriate comment about how I looked while working late, became the centerpiece of news articles about the case. Legal experts praised the thoroughness of my documentation, calling it a textbook example of how to build a harassment case. 3 weeks after Leonard's termination, I received an unexpected phone call that would reshape my entire career trajectory. The caller introduced herself as Rebecca Morrison, senior partner at Pinnacle Risk Solutions, one of Halcyon's biggest competitors. Miss Brooks, I've been following your situation closely, she said. What you did took incredible courage, and frankly, it's exactly the kind of integrity we value at Pinnacle. The offer she made was stunning. Director of Risk Strategy, a position 2 levels above what I had held at Halcyon, with a salary increase of 40%. But more than the money or the title, it was the respect in her voice that moved me. We need leaders who aren't afraid to do the right thing, even when it's difficult, Rebecca continued. Your reputation in this industry is impeccable, and after what you've been through, every firm in Denver knows you're someone who can be trusted completely. The irony wasn't lost on me. Leonard's attempt to destroy my career had actually elevated it. By trying to silence me, he had made me impossible to ignore. My story had spread throughout the consulting industry, and instead of being seen as a troublemaker, I was viewed as someone with unshakable integrity. I accepted Pinnacle's offer immediately. On my first day, Rebecca introduced me to the team with words that still give me chills. "This is Tiana Brooks, our new Director of Risk Strategy. Some of you may know her story. She's proven that she'll always choose what's right over what's easy, and that's exactly the kind of leader we need." The consulting world is smaller than most people realize. Word traveled fast that Pinnacle had not only hired me, but promoted me to a senior leadership position. Leonard's attempt to blacklist me had completely backfired. As I settled into my new office, looking out over downtown Denver from the 23rd floor, I reflected on how the past few months had unfolded. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't planned. It's simply allowing the truth to speak for itself while refusing to be silenced.